Welcome to the Monday, December 19th, 2022 City of Tullahoma Planning Commission. Call the meeting to order. Determination of a quorum. We have everyone present, including our newest member, Mr. Marvin Sellers. So we'll welcome him with that. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Hall to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So to move on to the reading and the approval of the minutes from the November 21st meeting. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes, and we can.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve from Mr. Berry. And a second, and then I'll open a discussion on that.
Okay, let me go first. On the third page, under the zoning map amendment public hearing, way down under there, right below number 6 of public comments, a motion was made by Barry and seconded by me, and I think it was Comer that made the motion, but I want to double check on with Barry. So that's what I will change it from Barry to Comer. Is that accurate?
I'll make that correction.
Okay.
All right. So what we'll do is let's go and talk about the corrections, and then we'll make a motion. We'll make a motion to amend them as agreed. So we're going to amend a motion made by Mr. Daniel Berry and seconded by Mr. Alex. No, I'm sorry. I'm in the wrong spot. Where are you? Page 3. Oh, I'm stuck. Okay, number 6. All right, so on page 3A, motion made by, and that needs to be Mr. Comer. Okay, and then Mr. Andy Hall seconded, and the vote passed 5-1 with Ms. Omler for extending. Okay, so that's correct. Anything else? My correction is that the vote is not specified on number 6, on page 2, number 6, new business, section B. A motion made by Mr. Daniel Berry, seconded by Mr. Andy Hall to approve. That passed 6-0. Anything else? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended? Mr. Berry? Mr. Hall? All right, we'll vote on the minutes as amended. All approve? Aye. All opposed? Any abstain? Okay, all right. Good deal. All right, so the minutes have been amended, and we're good to move on with that, I think, right? You get that? All right. Just as a general comment, I'm going to try to slow the motions and the seconds and the voting down a little bit to make sure we get that accurately accurate. We had some technical difficulties with the video last time, and it made difficulty for the minutes. So, in the meeting as a whole, let's try to adhere through the proper channels and do that from here. So, all right. Well, moving on to the reports of officers and staff.
Thank you, Mary Samaniego. The only report I had at the last meeting, we discussed your required annual training. As you know, per state statute, all planning commission members are required to have 4 hours of training annually. We were thinking of doing it online, but it was suggested to perhaps get Sam Edwards to do the training in person, so then everybody can be privy to the same information and ask questions. He is available to do the training. So the question is, do you want to do it after your next meeting on January 16th? And again, if you remember from last year, we did it after the meeting and it was a 4-hour study work session, or do we want to do it on just a separate date?
Say a separate date.
It's a 4-hour, is that what you said?
That'd be long.
Yeah, I don't want to do that all in one night.
That may be much.
Okay, yeah, let's,
Okay, so what I'll do then is tomorrow, I'll send everybody out emails, polling dates and times and everything for the beginning of January.
okay, that'd be good, thank you.
That's all I have tonight.
Did you want to talk about the rest of the agenda?
Yeah, we can go ahead and clear it. Under new business, item number 2, Peck and Paw, Jean Drive minor subdivision, that was withdrawn by the applicant. Number 7A3, Coppers Creek Estates, final plat phase 2 is being continued to the January 16th, 2023 public hearing. And then I'm not sure if the applicants are here for 424G Road. Were you able to get the TDEC approval for your septics? But the state hasn't signed it yet? Okay, so because it's a required that septic systems have to go through the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation and be approved for their septic fields prior to the Planning Commission approving a plat, we'll have to continue that item to the January 16th, 2023 meeting.
Okay, we'll make that motion.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right. There's no old business, so we'll move on to new business. The first order of new business is subdivision plats that are public hearing, and then 424 G Road, minor subdivision. Applicant speak on that, I guess?
Well, that's the one we'll have to continue because you can't legally approve it yet.
Understood. So with that, I'd like to have a motion to continue to the January 16th meeting from Mr. Berry.
Second.
Mr. Hall. Any discussion on that? To call to vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. It's 7-0 to continue to the January 16th meeting. All right. Item number 2 has been withdrawn. Item number 3. Do we need to make a continuance on that, or is that public record already?
It's already in the public record.
Okay. All right. So we'll skip. And then, so item number 3 has been continued to January 16th. Item number 4, Macon Manor, major subdivision, final plat, phase 4. A plat to create 5 lots from the existing 3.52 acres of the 200 block of Albemarle Drive. Applicant is Mr. Josh Sudbury. I'd like to welcome. Give us a quick rundown of your development, and we'll move on from there.
Just 5 lots in the back of Macon Manor subdivision, which completes the Macon Manor development. There are certain restrictions that will be recorded with the 6.2 acres that directly adjoins this 3.5 acres total. We have all the paving and the infrastructure that was required has been in place, or has been put in place, and all that is left to do is the top coat once the timing is correct for that. And I don't think there's anything else that we need to cover.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? All right. Thank you. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing. Anyone that wishes to come forward and speak on this is welcome to, and just keep in mind, limit your comments to 2 minutes. All right. Seeing none, I'll move on to staff report.
Okay, thank you. Production, can you go to my presentation, please? As Mr. Sudbury said, this is phase 4 of Macon Manor subdivision, final plat. Here is the location. Again, it's kind of at the northern section of the original Macon Manor. If you remember from a year or so ago, this preliminary plat came in, and they decided through coordination with the applicant and the Macon Manor Homeowners Association to absorb these 5 lots into Macon Manor and make it a new phase. So they received their preliminary plat approval, they received their construction plan approval. As the applicant stated, they have completed all the required infrastructure except for the final coat of asphalt, which they have bonded for, and that bond for the amount, it's a letter of credit, for the amount of $25,700 is in our finance department now and held until the majority of the lots are developed. Other than that, there's just one note that needs to be added to the plat, and staff is recommending approval for the final plat because it's compliant with the preliminary plat and construction plans.
Thank you, Mary. All right, with that, and a motion to,
Move to approve.
I got a motion from Ms. Almacher and a second from Mr. Berry. Any discussion?
Quick question. You said there's one final note to add?
2-inch gas main.
It's in the staff report, it's just about clarification about, they have to extend the illustration of the gas line. It's on page 11.
Right. Do we need to add that to the motion?
Yes. My recommendation is staff recommends approval of the final plat subject to staff comments.
Subject to staff comments.
Ms. Almacher, it's your motion.
Move to approve, subject to staff comments.
Okay. All right, any other discussion? All right, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0. I'm going to write that down. Try to take better notes. Too. All right, moving on. The zoning map amendments, also public hearing. Zoning map amendment number 271 request. A request to rezone the property at 100 block of Oak Park Drive on 2.14 acres from the general commercial zoning district C2 to the low density residential zoning district. The applicant is the Harton Family Partners, ILP. They'd like to come forward and speak on that.
Thank you. My name is Clifton Miller. I'm the attorney for Harton Family Partners. This is kind of a end process for some litigation that was involved in the Oak Park subdivision. I represented Harton Family, and I believe the city was represented by Mr. Mark McGrady, who's here on behalf of the city. Harton Family Partners is requesting that at some point in the past, lots 1 through 6 of Oak Park was rezoned from R1 to C1, I got C2, or C2, and we're asking that those lots be rezoned back to R1, and there's going to be, and then the lots will then, there's 2 of the lots, 1 through 2, which will be dedicated to the subdivision, a entity to be formed by the subdivision, and it'll be a green area, green zone, a park, and then lots 3, 4, 5, and 6 will be redrawn into, instead of 4 lots, there'll be 3 lots. So the lot where Harton is going to make the lots larger, and then those will be residential lots. Also provided for some green zones along the back between the commercial property and the Oak Park subdivision, which the subdivision organization is going to pay for. Any questions?
Any questions?
Yes.
What are the sizes of the lots going to be after, you said you're going to sort of split them up, so what are the sizes of the lots going to be?
The lots will be 0.49. 21,263 square feet. So they're going, I don't recall what they were before them, but they were substantially less.
Okay. This is just a request for rezoning, so there's no contractual or stipulations on that. So.
I have a question. Rezone. So it was residential at one point, and then you said it was changed to commercial. So I think I'm trying to figure out in my head where this is. Was it changed to commercial around the time that like Brothers Market was built? Is that at that same time, or is this a different?
I don't know the timing of that. I think that's more of a city question. I think this dates back decades.
Okay, so it's been, my question is, it's been commercial for some time now.
Lots 1 through 6 of Hope Park have been commercial for a long I believe to be 20 years plus. Around there.
Okay.
Sometime around 2010 or so.
Okay.
Okay.
So, and we're asking it to go back to R1, which is consistent with Oak Park, the remainder of Oak Park. Any further questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, I'll ask the public if anyone's wants to speak on this. Please approach the podium and state your name and your address, and your 2 minutes, limited to 2 minutes. Thank you.
I'm John Lurch. I live at 313 Oak Park Drive in the same subdivision. I'm not objecting or anything, but my understanding was that they didn't know, they couldn't find the evidence that it really had been, to your question, actually rezoned to Z1, or C1 rather, and so that that's one reason why, so that it isn't clear exactly how any such resolution should be framed. They made a search and they couldn't find evidence that it had been, the only evidence was that there was a final statement somewhere, but the history of it was missing. So that was my understanding. So that I don't know how that might affect any framing that you want, how you would frame your resolution.
So you said you do not have any objection, to clarify?
It's not an objection, it's just that I'm just a little afraid that if it's phrased in the way it's phrased, I don't know if that, someone might say, oh, then it should have been C1 after all. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Swear, I have a comment about that.
Yes.
About 20 years ago or so, and I do have a file on this, but I wasn't prepared to discuss it tonight, the city had a citywide rezoning effort, and the zoning map was changed as a result of that. We didn't go through the process that the code requires now of each adjoining property owner or affected property owners being informed of that. So this property was rezoned as part of that a long, long time ago as C2. And that's the only reference is how that happened. Now, there weren't any particular things addressing this particular property, but it occurred on the zoning map, which is approved by the ordinance that rezoned the whole citywide.
Thank you. And that's came up several times in multiple places, I believe, right? Okay, right.
My name is Laura McCall, and I live at 124 Oak Park Drive. I just wanted to, I'm one of the litigants in the case, and I wanted to express to the Planning Committee that about 2 years ago, we received signatures. This is being brought forth as part of a settlement to this case. And about 2 years ago, we collected, I think about maybe 80% of the property owners' signatures on an agreement to this. So we have widespread agreement in the neighborhood for this, for the official rezoning back to residential R1. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Just one more thing. Mr. McGrady reminded me of a particular point. There's a small portion of Lot 1, which is if you've ever been out to there's a drive, an exit out of the little market that's being excluded from Lot 1, which will remain C2, and a portion of that market, I'm not sure who owns it now, but and so I just wanted to clarify that particular point. And that was part of the original agreement that was made between all the parties and the city.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anyone else from the public? All right, seeing none, I'll close the public. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. And we'll move on to staff report.
Thank you. As the applicant stated, this is a rezoning. It's specifically, let me get my mic. Sorry. Zoning map amendment 271. It is a 100 block of Oak Park Drive from C2 to R1. Here is the general location. The property is in red. As a note, because they are rezoning a portion of a property, the applicant has provided a legal description from their surveyor that I will include in the ordinance. So it's not going to be like a map and a parcel number. It'll be an actual legal description for that finite area. And again, just to clarify the record, it does exclude the driveway from West Side into Brothers. Here is existing uses of the property. The green color are residential. Kind of the magenta color on the south is actually residential as well, but that's when you cross over into Franklin County and they use different colors for their existing use maps. So you can see the majority, all of Oak Park subdivision is single-family residential as well as across the street. The turquoise colors for reference are commercial, and then the pink is vacant. Here's the zoning map. Currently, again, you can see that the subject property is zoned commercial. I guess my professional opinion is when they went through and rezoned back in '09, because these undeveloped lots in Oak Park subdivision were still part of the parent tract that Hardin owned, they just rezoned the whole thing and didn't notice to take out that specific area. Here's the land use map for the 2011 comprehensive plan. As you can see, specifically, it's in a commercial area. However, with comprehensive plan and land use maps, the borders are somewhat flexible. The interpretation along borders can be flexible. They can go one way or another. It directly joins single-family residential land use category, so I feel comfortable making a recommendation that this rezoning is appropriate, given it's right on the border of a commercial area and a single-family residential land use category. Saying that, staff is recommending approval of the rezoning, or I'm sorry, staff is recommending to vote to send a favorable recommendation to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen based on the findings of fact of Section 1006E in your staff report on page 18 of the City of Tullahoma zoning ordinance. That concludes my presentation.
All right. Thank you, Mary.
Motion to approve with staff recommendations.
Motion to send a favorable recommendation to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
Roll.
Okay. Second? Okay. All right. Discussion?
I have a question. On line 4, it says R1 high-density residential. Should that have been low-density residential?
Where are you?
On page 15, item number 4.
Item number 4. Yes, that is a typo. It should say low density
Okay,
residential.
and I'm not sure if I'm supposed to ask this. I'm just curious, is there no, did I see that there's no sewer available, so these have to have the 20,000 square foot unit? Is that what I'm reading there?
No, sewer is available.
It is? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Anything else? I guess my only other question is there's no, Mr. Worsham, there's no more pending litigation on this, is there?
You might want to ask Mr. Miller that. The city was really not actively involved in that litigation, but I think the matter's been resolved, and this that's being sought tonight is the result of the resolution, and this will take care of that litigation, is my understanding.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're done with that.
The litigation is still active and open. A final order has not been entered pending this approval.
Okay.
Once this approval is done, we will enter a final order that dissolves the litigation.
If I clarify, I'm Mark McGreedy. Through the insurance company, I represent the city in this, and I believe it's correct that there's going to have to be some redoing.
Can you state your name again, please?
Mark McGready for the, I'm an attorney with Fair and Bates out of Brentwood, but I represent the city in the litigation. I think there actually will be a second step we'll have to come back for because the lots are being redone. I don't know if I had to go before the Planning Commission, may have to go before it may be a minor one. But
Sorry, just to clarify, yes, there are two steps. One is to get this rezoning passed. The second step is to do the plat amendment, which we've already kind of preliminarily approved administratively. It doesn't come before the Planning Commission because it's just a reconfiguring of existing lots. So that's a revised plat that's approved administratively. So the rezoning has to be approved first, then we can sign off on the plat, and you're done.
And that won't have to come before the planning commission?
No, not
even-
revised plats do not come before the planning commission.
Are they, what about the little notch that's remaining C2 or C1?
That's not part of the subdivision.
Okay.
So,
It is currently, so it has to be removed from that subdivision.
Right, it'll be cut out, right.
So the litigation is still pending, as Mr. Miller said. There was a settlement agreement that says these things have to be done to finalize the settlement agreement, and what we're doing tonight is, what you're considering tonight is part of the process to get that all done.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I wanted to make sure we weren't getting the cart before the horse, and this was proper. All right, any other discussion? Do you have anything? Okay. All right, with that, I'll call the question, and call for a vote. All in favor of rezoning? Aye. Aye. All opposed? Abstain? All right, 7-0. And that was Mr. Perry, you had the initial motion? Okay. All right, moving on to other new business. The revision of the bylaws to allow general public comment. On page 25 of your packet. I will let Ms. Samaniego give her staff report on that.
Okay, thank you. At the last meeting, you directed staff to advertise and to draft proposed language in the bylaws to allow for public comment, general public comment not related to specific agenda items. So we can go through my draft and see what you think. It's on page 30. New section 4. Prior to the beginning of all public hearings for new and/or old business, general public comment may be taken for topics under the authority of the Planning Commission or the Board of Zoning Appeals for items not on the agenda. The Planning Commission the Planning Commission or Board of Zoning Appeals can discuss items presented under public comment and place said item on a future agenda as a discussion item or refer the item to staff for research and possible future action. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. Again, I clarified for items not on the agenda because typically most of your actions are public hearings, so I wanted to differentiate between, so someone knows if they're coming to speak about a rezoning, they have to talk during that rezoning hearing. When you open and close that public hearing. These are just for all other general planning and/or Board of Zoning Appeals issues. And then normally you're allowed during the public comment period for the actual public hearings that are being voted on. Each speaker usually gets 2 minutes, but I thought it would be appropriate to maybe be 3 minutes because typically if somebody is speaking about something that's not on the agenda, they're kind of explaining some issue, problem, concern, idea that they have that they probably can't get out in 2 minutes. And that is the pleasure of the Planning Commission if they want to increase that number as you see fit.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
My only real question now is this also a public hearing?
Well, yes. Yes,
Okay, so-
it is. Yes, because I advertised it.
All right, then I'll open the public hearing
Yeah.
for comments
Yeah.
on the revised bylaws, if anybody would like to come forward and... All right, with that, I'll close the public hearing. And then I will entertain a motion.
Well, yes, I'll make a motion and then I'll
Okay.
make an amendment.
Okay. I got your name right.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to amend this, because I do think that the language can get a little confusing just based on the fact that it says prior to the beginning of all public hearings. I just think that you should say prior to the beginning kind of is redundant a little bit. It should say at the beginning of the agenda on the Planning Commission meeting directly following the reports of officers and staff, or just before the reports, which wherever you want to put it in a specific place. But before any new business is discussed, there will be a section for general public comments that do not have to be on the agenda, and then the rest is okay. But there was something else I was going to say about that.
Well, hang on.
Okay, so my amendment is prior to the beginning is redundant. You would never say prior to the beginning, so it should be at the beginning of the Planning Commission meeting. There should be a section for, that way you're not having to reopen the public hearing after every section, because this is just general public commentary, not on any specific section. So you would just do it one time. Kind of like the Board of Mayor and Alderman meetings.
Right.
Makes sense?
Change prior to beginning, change it to
At the beginning of the Planning Commission meeting, there will be a section on the agenda for public commentary. It just eliminates some of the confusion.
It's fine. It might be also appropriate to put it like after the minutes and before reports of officers and staff, so then during the reports of officers and staff, you can direct staff to say, hey, based on what we just heard, do this research.
I believe that would be appropriate. I'll amend my motion as to...
But how about, it's your motion.
Okay, so motion is to say at the beginning of all public hearings, at the beginning of all Planning Commission meetings.
We just move it to immediately after approval of the minutes.
Works for me.
Yes.
Immediately after approval of the minutes at all Planning Commission meetings. How's that?
Okay.
Immediately after the approval of the minutes at all Planning Commission meetings.
Okay.
Right,
There will be a section for public commentary.
Did you get that? Do I have a second? A second from Mr. Sellers? All right. Discussion on the amendment.
Can you read it back just
Okay.
Motion to amend, changing prior to beginning to at all, there will be a general comment section at all Planning Commission meetings immediately after approval of the minutes.
Yes, ma'am. My only discussion, am I recognized?
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. My only discussion would be, I believe I was the one to kind of bring this up. There have been several times when an individual from the public has called me and particularly maybe wanted to discuss something, a change to be made to our land use map or our ordinances, or even a zoning request that wasn't necessarily before us yet, and they would like to apprise the board and this commission of certain things, but there was no opportunity to do such at these meetings. And so I think this will be a pleasant change for the community. That way their voice can be heard more often.
So, as a matter of procedure, I think we need to vote on the amendment, and then we can discuss.
I'm sorry, we didn't.
Yeah. So, any discussion on the amendment? Is everyone with that? Let's vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay. All right. The amendment, 7-0. So now, open discussion for the revision of the bylaws. Okay. All right. Any discussion? All right. Here's my thoughts on it. I feel like, first off, I do feel like there is public engagement in this process through the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, who are the elected officials that represent the people that are sitting on this board. The folks that are sitting on this board are essentially appointed by the city to oversee the planning process. Any public comments should come through the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, through the Board of Mayor and Aldermen representative that sits on this board. I'm not so sure that we need to have open comment as at this hearing itself. That's my comments. Ms. Almacher.
may I clarify that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen does not approve the members of this board, the mayor does. And the Board of Mayor and Aldermen doesn't generally attend all planning commission meetings. In fact, I only see but the mayor here tonight, and he usually is here, and he's very good about attending, and he usually knows more about things that than we do about what is happening. But furthermore, there actually are some board members who have just now, they're learning that subdivision approvals, plat approvals, those types of things, changes to our, what do you call that, subdivision code? Essentially, subdivision restrictions, anything like that. Those things do not go before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. The only thing that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen gets to approve are ordinance changes to our zoning requests. So when you guys are approving subdivision plats, we never see those, and we know nothing about them unless the public brings it to our attention. So you guys are just as much, being appointed, this is a state-created board that is required. You have more authority than I think you care to realize. And so you are just as much a representative, not just of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, but of the public and the city of Tullahoma. So please remember that. You will have people reach out to you, and please, reach out to people whenever you're seeing these requests. It's really incumbent upon you to not just depend on us, because there's a lot of things on here we know nothing about.
I understand that. My comment was more directed that the process, and it's been shown to work. Mr. Sellers actually, through going to Mary, was able to get some amendments through and was listened to by our planning staff. But my comment about the Board of Mayor and Aldermen is not necessarily that everything goes through there or that this board is appointed by that. It is that there are representatives from the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, you being one of them, that are here to bring forth that public interface to this board for things that aren't on the agenda. Anyway, Mr. Berry.
Because of the format that we have here, I do believe that everything, like tonight we had on the agenda 4 public hearings, 5 including this. Unlike the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Board of Mayor and Aldermen, you just got comments at the beginning. Here, you have every opportunity to get up and speak. I do disagree. There were 2 years that I was not on the Planning Commission, but I knew everything that happened in the Planning Commission because I watched the meetings and I read the packets and I did my due diligence as a board member. So I did always know. That's not relevant to this conversation. My hesitation with kind of the general public comments is, like yours, that probably is best working out some things through Mary first, some legality stuff that we just don't know. Like, we're not supposed to know all of those pieces. That's why we have staff. That's why we have a legal team, and so they can fill out some of those details. I'm on the fence. I'll probably decide in the moment because I think that there's plenty of opportunity to speak on every item that we do here, unlike at the BOMA.
So with this public hearing, with the wording, I'm kind of, are they still regulated to, talking about zoning, and can they get up there and talk about whatever they want to, or is it still they have to be pertained to some kind of zoning amendment or some kind of some zoning they would like to change, or are they just allowed to get up there and talk about whatever they want to, and we can have 20 people talk for 30 minutes about anything in the city?
Topics under authority of the Planning Commission, so I would imagine that we could.
So if they got up there and they started going on a bandstand about something completely irrelevant, we could cut them off. I mean, it would end up ugly if you did that, is my only withdrawal. I could see bleed over from stuff happening at the Board of Mayor and Aldermen that's really applicable to them, but maybe not to us. But it would be good to hear. Maybe if people are unhappy the way that the zoning is structured and things like that, just like Mr. Sellers brought up, he brought up some ideas. I think that's probably the best way to go about it, is going through Mary, but at the same time, I don't know if everybody's going to take the initiative or know the direct person to talk to all the time. So, I don't know. I came in thinking one way, and now I don't know which way it'll go.
Well, so this is one of those situations where, like the idea that Mr. Marvin Sellers had, we have another member of the community who has emailed all of us, I'm sure you guys got the email, about ideas on how to change the R1 to have multiple, like R1A, R1B, R1C. And that, I believe that person would have loved to come up here and present that not only to our board, but also these meetings are televised, which then gets the information out to the public at large. And then we can also then gauge the public's interest in, especially with our realtors and people who are in the business, and they can come to us and say, hey, I heard about this and I'm not sure you would want to do that. Or, hey, I heard about this and I think that would be a great change and that would greatly help my industry, or vice versa. And so sometimes when you just go through, this is not a dig at bureaucracy, but when you just go through the bureaucracy, the problem with that is we never hear about it, and you put all of that power into one individual's hand who may ultimately make the right decision, or they may make the wrong decision, or they may not even understand the request. I think this is not limiting people from being able to do it that way. And there are a lot of people in the community who are in the industry who know exactly where to go and exactly who to talk to. But this is another way for people to be able to bring it to the public at large's attention, as well as the full board's attention of, hey, I don't even know how you would fix this, but this would be a good idea for you to look at. So it's always a good idea to have, and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, we have a limit on 3 minutes. So that would be a potential motion that you might want to make. Is it?
It
okay,
is.
I forget about reading that. So yeah, the 3 minutes would obviously cut them off. And if the commentary was not relevant to anything that this board had purview over, the chairman as well could ask them, could stop their comments. So you've got a lot of protections in place, and it would just be one time. It wouldn't be after everything that we discuss, like these at the end here. We wouldn't have to discuss those. Public hearings, you could still hold that open specific, and people would speak specific to that public hearing. But this would just be for general comments and purposes. Lucky for you guys, you're not as contentious or as, I don't know what the word is, as some of us are on our board. So I don't foresee you having people coming up here, trying to burn the building down at the planning commission meetings. Hopefully not. They'll wait and save that for our meetings, and we can, burn under the fire like we normally do. But I do think that the public would really appreciate this.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. At the city board meetings, the mayor and aldermen are not allowed to engage, or the speakers aren't allowed to engage with the board of mayor and aldermen. That's not true in our public hearings. We do ask questions of the speakers in the public hearing. How would we approach that here?
I mean, at our meetings, like we ask questions relevant. We can point some information towards the applicant or staff. The comments from general public, we typically don't ask questions or engage with that unless
we don't have that opportunity now. So what I'm asking is, if we do enforce this, which way would we go? It hasn't been stated, to my knowledge, which way it would go.
I'd say let us engage. That's one thing I don't like about the BOMA, is we can't engage. Yeah. So I would like to make
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think most people are going to, like you said, bring up a question and looking for an answer, and if we can't technically engage, then they're still left kind of confused.
Well, I think we should be able to ask questions of them to better understand what their position is.
I agree. You want to motion that?
I'll amend it, yes.
I'll second that.
All right, what's your amendment? You got to go.
To change this wording to allow engagement between the board, the commission, and the speakers.
Okay.
I love it.
while you were saying something, I had something jogged my memory about that's a slippery slope.
I have a question. How was that engagement, how was the time frame of 3 minutes going?
That was it, yes.
Just said.
So they're at the board
I would
meeting.
assume, I'll change that motion, be it, that engagement would occur after the 3 minutes has expired or they have finished what they had to say.
Yes, yes.
And then they get an additional 2 minutes or?
As long as the commissioners would like to engage.
Okay.
Yeah, I think maybe you word it to, it's up to the commissioner. So if we want to cut them off and be done, they don't get 2 minutes every time they rebuttal.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's fair. It's your motion, so I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Well stated.
All right, did you get that?
And to allow engagement between the board members or the commission members and speakers after the 3 minute time allowance.
After their initial statement or their 3 minute time limits. I think.
After initial statement. Okay. Okay.
Second by Barry. All right, discussion on that amendment. I think we've already kind of had discussion on that. Okay, all right. Voting on Mr. Comer's amendment. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? All right. That motion passes. Back to discussion on, I know. You need some more paper. All right, back to discussion on the initial thing. Any other discussion?
The initial revision.
Yeah, just real quick on this overall, because there are a lot of people who don't like to get up and speak. This does give you another opportunity to do so, but do reach out to us. Steve reached out. I spent about an hour, probably a little over an hour on the phone with him the other day talking about his issue. And then I did reach out to several realtors and builders and people that live in that area. And so I think it's incumbent upon us as planning commissioners. I took 6 phone calls this week over zoning, and part of that's because of my BOMA stuff as well. But I think some of that is make yourself available. We don't have our contact information on the website. We should at least have emails or something up there posted. But to those who don't want to come here or don't want to go to Mary, use our numbers, use our emails, contact us, and take advantage of those. So a lot of times if we know about it beforehand, we're a little bit better prepared, right? And you don't got to, maybe something we can get on the agenda, so you don't got to wait a whole nother month before we do anything with it, right?
Mr. Sellers?
Yeah, so when I made my initial contact with Mary is mainly as a result of all the meetings we've had prior to the 2040 thing. So I sort of went to her to ask her ideas about this. But I remember coming to a planning commission meeting one night and was asked if I wanted to speak, and they said, well, you can only speak on the topics that are on the hearing. I said, okay, well, I didn't have anything to say about that because I wanted to make a comment back when we were discussing the 2040 plan. So I hope we don't get to the point where we get into heated discussions, but I do like the option to have public being able to make comments that are not on the public hearing. Luckily, I was able to contact Mary and that helped. But if I had not, then I wouldn't have known to go to the Board of Mayor and ask them to do it, or I wouldn't have.
If we don't like it, change it.
All right. Any other comments? I got one other comment, and the wording may be weak, and the public comment may be taken, which seems to imply that it would be, I assume, up to the commissioner, or not the commissioner, but the chair, to decide whether or not to take that public comment. And I don't think that was intentional.
Wasn't.
Maybe her.
You can change it to shall.
Motion to amend to change may to
Yes.
Second, good catch.
Did you get that?
I'm getting it.
All right.
Motion to amend
May be taken to shall be taken.
may be taken to shall be. Okay.
All right. Discussion on that. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? All right, that motion passes. All right, so I'm going to ask you to read back what we're voting on, and then we'll call vote.
The original motion?
Not the original motion, just the amendments to the original motion, so we know.
First motion to amend was changing prior to beginning to at the PC meeting. There will be a general comment section immediately after approval of the minutes. Ms. Almacher made the motion. Mr. Sellers made the second. The vote was 7-0 in favor of. The second motion to amend was to allow engagement between the commissioners and the speakers after their initial statement and 3-minute time allowance. Mr. Comer made the motion. Mr. Berry seconded. The vote was 7-0 in favor of. The last motion to amend was to change the verbiage to may be taken to shall be taken. Motion was made by Mr. Berry, seconded by Ms. Almacher. The vote was 7-0 in favor of.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? With that, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, motion passes, or abstain? Motion passes 7-0. All right. All right, number 2, revision to subdivision regulations for lot sizes adjoining and access through existing subdivisions. Mary, I'll turn that over to you for a staff report.
Thank you. This is subdivision text amendment 09. This is the result of Planning Commission members, Sellers, discussing with me 2 potential revisions to the subdivision regulations. Over the past year, there's been discussion among citizens, Planning Commission members, and elected officials about lot sizes of new residential subdivisions. One of the specific concerns is the relationship of the size of the new subdivision lots compared to established adjoining neighborhood lots. While the new lots may meet the zoning minimum lot size, these lots are often smaller than the adjoining subdivision lots that were previously platted. Staff's proposal is to revise the subdivision regulations to require lots that directly adjoin existing subdivision lots to be increased in size to be compatible with those lots. And then please see a diagram that I tried to put together on the next page to kind of indicate what I was meaning. And we can certainly go to production, we can go to a map of the city and we can start looking at scenarios. So I want to make sure that you understand kind of when this applies and when it doesn't. The second main revision is related to the connectivity index and the use of platted rights-of-way stubs through adjoining neighborhoods. Specifically, there's a desire to limit the amount of new subdivision traffic that may travel through an existing subdivision via a right-of-way or a road stub connection. Staff is proposing to limit the number of lots that would derive access by through traffic to 30 single-family lots maximum. The limit is consistent with fire code restrictions with respect to the number of lots on a single point of access. So if you go through your packets, the first amendment related to the minimum lot size of the adjoining lots is in your packet on page 65. Let me see if I can get connected here. Of course, I'm having an internet connection issue. One moment. Okay, production, can you see my screen? No. Okay. Well, regardless, the specific language says we're a proposed lot in a major subdivision within the city limits, so this would not apply to the UGB as written. Again, this is a draft, and the Planning Commission can certainly revise it. But we're a proposed lot in a major subdivision within the city limits directly abuts an existing residential major subdivision lot. The minimum lot size of that proposed lot may be increased to be approximately the same size as the abutting existing lot. So what's that saying is that I have a 100-acre site and it is next to Mary Estate that has half-acre lots. In my new subdivision, the lots that directly adjoin the Mary Estate lots that are half-acre also have to be a half-acre. And then the remainder of the lots inside the subdivision can drop down to the minimum lot size of the applicable zoning district. If you have a 100-acre site and there's an existing named subdivision that has half-acre lots, and then there's 3/4-acre lots on the north side, then those lots that abut the 3/4-acre lots on the north side also have to be 3/4 of an acre. On the west side, if they're half-acre lots, those lots have to be half-acre, and then the remainder of the lots that don't touch that boundary can drop down to the minimum lot size. The thought is that so at the edges of these new subdivisions, they have compatible lot sizes to the existing development pattern of that immediate area. So I think it would probably be appropriate to handle these two one at a time.
Okay.
If that's okay, I'll follow your direction, sir.
I think that's appropriate.
Okay.
Because we're going to have different discussion on both of them, I'm sure. Okay. All right, this is a public hearing, so I will open up a public hearing to the changes in the, for public comment on the lot sizes adjoining. Anyone that would like to come forward and speak on that?
These technically aren't public hearings down here.
Okay.
In new business, but I'm great with opening up.
I would have
comments, so
liked to
go
think
ahead.
that the public should
Yeah.
have some kind of input on what
Yeah.
we're doing with our subdivision
I have your
regulations.
questions.
This is, that's what we changed, so in the future, you wouldn't have to do it down here, you would, for those things under the other new business like these, that would be when it would be appropriate for them to speak.
Yeah, gotcha. So I think someone, sir. Sorry for the confusion.
Good evening. I'm Dan Markham, live at 1783 of Oka Lake Road, which is outside the city but inside the urban boundary. We have an 18-acre lot that is on Avoca Road that lies south of, help me with the subdivision names, Hickory Hills and north of Somerset. That are pretty well described in the way she just described them. The lots to the north are 0.7 acres. The lots to the south are about 0.5 acres. And then there's major tracts of land to the west and across the road to the east. Just determining what the lot sizes are very difficult to do. I don't know how to do that. The lot is too narrow for more than a lot against Somerset and a lot against, I should say, a lot on the north, a lot on the south, and the road between. So therefore, we have to put, ours are not as deep as the lots on either side. So we're not able to put as many lots because of the confusion of the boundary. I don't necessarily know how to explain it further than that, but I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
I think I understand. I mean, any questions for Mr. Markham? Okay.
So is it going to, you have that strip of land is going to have, it's going to have houses, would have houses on both borders of the one on each side, and one in the center or two in the center?
Only one road is only wide enough for a single road. If we talk about conventional single-family housing, if we talk about other approaches, we can do other things. But with the conventional, there were 50-foot right-of-way, and it's only about, I think, 400 feet deep. So each of the lots would be only about 150 feet deep.
well, you wouldn't make it 3/4 to the north and then half acre to the south?
You could, yes, but
That's sort of, that was the intent, and what I was trying to propose is that on boundaries, they would be like size. They don't have to be the same across the street from each other, but they'd be like size to the existing boundary on either side. And then if you had enough land in the middle, they could be whatever, they could shrink down.
well, she indicated, but these don't have any room. It's only 18 acres. So it's not big enough to have multiple depths of lots. It's only the lots that will border one road that would be built in the center of the 18 acres. So they would have to be matching, I guess it's 0.7 acres on the north and 0.5 acres on the south. But that makes them much less dense than either subdivision that's adjoining them. And that doesn't quite seem to be fair to make the density less than the density that's currently being called for.
All right, let's do this. Thank you for your comments.
Okay.
Let's stick to the script. Any other?
Map would help.
May I make a clarification or ask a question first? So the intent of this is only to limit the lot sizes when there is connectivity through another subdivision, correct?
No.
This is a different.
This is any new subdivision that goes in, the lots on the exterior boundary have to match the size of the adjoining subdivisions. Regardless, it's a whole separate issue.
Okay.
To the
I mean, that's the
connectivity.
clarification I needed.
Mr. Moore.
Thank you. I'm Joe Orr. I'm a realtor here in Tullahoma. Been here for 47 years. I live at 106 Kensington Lane, Tullahoma. Well, actually, right now, we're working with a potential developer to buy a prime piece of property in Tullahoma to develop it. And the developer has contacted one of my agents that's representing him. And pretty well, he said if you pass this, he's out. So I think it's being too restrictive. And I think we've got enough restrictions in place, and the cost of developing, the cost of land is restrictive enough. So I think it's a bad idea. We need some lots to build houses in Tullahoma. Tullahoma needs to grow its base population. And one of the reasons that Tullahoma has been successful as it has is because we had nice developments like Fairways and Macon Manor, where people could buy beautiful homes. There's no lots for sale. I looked at our multiple listing service this afternoon, matter of fact, and there's only 4 lots for sale in the city limits of Tullahoma. That's all. So we've been low on lots for a long, long time. And so people are having to go outside of Tullahoma to build homes. Developers are not building in Tullahoma because there's not opportunities there. Builders aren't building because there's no lots to build on, to speak of. So they're going to surrounding towns and outside the city. And when a town quits growing, what I've always heard is it starts to die. So I think we need to really think about this. And affordable housing, I think, is something that we need to offer. Right now, if you restrict a subdivision to 2,000 square feet, you're going to be looking at over $400,000 homes, minimum. So we're going to have to see maybe a little smaller homes to be affordable. We're going to have to look at a little smaller lots.
All right, thank you, Mr.
To make
Moore.
it more practical. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ron Darden. I live at 603 12 Oaks Drive. My property joins the proposed Anderson development. And I support the recommendations that Commissioner Sellers made prior to being on the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Charles Dean, 419 Albemarle Drive. and I'll open the can of worms here. My home is in Bangor Manor. It borders Anderson Farms, and I believe it borders the property that Mr. Orr was probably talking about as well. The thing that I like about this proposal is that it's not necessarily telling the city or the developers that they have to have smaller or larger homes everywhere throughout the city. We're talking about a comparable, apples to apples. So you're talking about homes that back up to areas that have a whatever size lot, let's say a half-acre lot, being on a half-acre lot. I understand in Mr. Markham's case, you've got an 18-acre property. I don't know the shape of that property. I do know the shape of Anderson Farms, and I know it's 200 acres. So everything is relative to both size and also the density issues as well. So I like the idea of Mr. Seller's proposal. The one thing I would like to see is rather than it say may, replace the word may to shall. And that's my comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hello, I'm Jeff Bowen, general contractor in the area for 38 years, developer of Settlers Trace subdivision, Collinwood subdivision, and recently the Macon Manor Phase 4, worked with Josh Sudbury on it. I will echo what Mr. Orr said earlier. I keep hearing from this board and from the Board of Mayor and Aldermen that we need more affordable housing opportunities in the city. But at every turn, as developers, we keep getting more things put on us. Totally irrelevant to this board, the TUA board has passed a new thing, and I may misquote because I didn't have my notes with me, but within 2 to 2.5 years, as a developer, we're going to be out another $3,500 per lot before we ever get a plat approved, because the city's growing. It is unfair to property owners, to developers. For example, Terra Estates was developed, started in the late 70s, I believe, and in the early 80s, acre to acre and a quarter lots. So now you're saying the person that owns the property beside of it, times have changed. The market has changed since the 80s. But you're saying now they have to give up and follow the mandate or the restriction, whatever you want to call it, the development code that was done 40 years ago. The average homeowner today looking doesn't want an acre lot. Most of them are paying a lawn service. They want something that's large enough for what they need and to go. And as a contractor, I can tell you, there is an equation that has to be factored in. What you pay for your lot dictates how much house you have to put on it in order to make a profit. Make the lots bigger, the houses have to be bigger. Now you've got a house that's in a price range that maybe the market's not supporting 5 years from now. So, all things to be considered.
Thank you.
My name's Greg Broussard, and lived in Tullahoma for 17 years. I live in Brookfield Estates.
I'm sorry, what was your address?
302 Huntington Place.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, I understand people at Anderson Farms, Terra Estates, and also the property between where I live, Blantonwood and Brookfield. We want homes that are, you know, half-acre lots, not an acre or an acre and a half. If you look at Brookfield and Blantonwood and Macon Manor, they're half-acre lots, basically. And the average square footage is 1,800 square feet. The last two subdivisions built was Macon Manor and Brookfield Phase 2. It's at 2,000 square feet minimum. we just don't want our property values going down with quarter acre lots with small housing. We don't want our property values to go down. And about affordable housing, if you look back just 2 years ago, 30-year fixed rates were 2.75%. Now, I just got on the web for a 30-year loan is 7.06%. But my son-in-law just closed on a house this past Friday. He was lucky, he got 6.5%. He has good credit. But if you go for a $240,000 home, 2 years ago, just the rent for that house would be $980 a month, not counting property taxes or insurance, just the mortgage. Today, that's $1,517. Now, just because of the economy, new administration, I mean, that's substantial. And bottom line is, this takes a lot of infrastructure. If you look at Murfreesboro and Nashville, I look at Murfreesboro in 2022, they want to increase their property tax valuations 44% for property taxes. And during COVID in 2000, Nashville increased theirs 34% and it was passed.
All right, thank you.
We need to think clearly. Thank you.
Mr. Gray?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name's John Gray. I live at 121 Autumn Lane. I'm 73 years old, and I've lived here 71 of my 73 years. Came from Oak Ridge because of Arnold Center. Watched this town develop for years. Watched when I was in high school and college, co-ops come because Arnold Center, which was a great big change for this town, brought employment here, brought work here. There was an apartment complex out in the corner, Forest Park. All the co-ops lived there. They left college and came here to Tullahoma to live, to be taught how to be aerospace engineers. If the same thing, government's getting ready to spend billions of dollars out there now, those co-ops are going to have to live in Murfreesboro. There's no place for people to live here. We want industry. Where's the industry employees going to live? There's not any place. What, 4 lots? There's not any place in this town to live. Everybody has nice, this is a nice town. And everybody acts like because it's not the right size, it's going to be a piece of trash that people are going to build. That's not what people want. I'd like to have a nice condo I could move into. A lot of our children who we want to come back here live in cities. They don't even have cars. They don't want to mow grass. They want a nice complex where they can have a small condo or a small home and live and play and walk. We're making this town walkable. We're trying to get our young people to come back. Well, you need to build somewhere where they can live. And if it's not the right size, because it might be on a piece of land that was a farm, look around. You're probably living on a piece of land that was a farm too. If it's good enough for you, make it good enough for our children to come back here and live.
Thank you, Mr.
Make
Gray.
it good enough for the employees that are coming here to work, who we demand industry.
Mr. Gray,
They
your
got no
time's
place to
expired. Thank
live.
you.
Doesn't have to be big to be nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Terry Flagger, 308 Terra. I agree with John. I agree with Mr. Orr. I agree with them, and we need places, definitely, no doubt about it. We need condos, we need over 55, we need places for people to live. But we also have to protect those that do live here already. And if you are, I am not against the, I'm not butt up against the, for Anderson Farm, I'm not against the subdivision. So I'm not speaking personally, I'm speaking for my neighbors throughout Tullahoma for future subdivision regulation. That I think if you do own a half acre, you don't want Not if there's anything against people that want a quarter acre, that's great. Make it on the next street. But it should be behind you. You shouldn't have 2 or 3 houses. If you own an acre, you shouldn't have 4 or 5 houses behind you. That doesn't make sense to me, and it would bring the property value down. So it's nothing with not wanting people to be able to find affordable housing. It's just adjoining it, that's all. It's adjoining it. It's not the whole subdivision. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else speaking on this? Mr. Sudbury.
Hi, Josh Sudbury, 104 Troon Way. Hadn't lived here that long, so can't say any of that. I just have some problems with the verbiage of what is in the proposed language, and I think it's also an unworkable standard because you could have multiple abutting properties with varying sizes of lots, and the developer then has to make some kind of zigzag pattern of lots in order to make them match. I think the verbiage in the proposed amendment kind of gives away its goal in that it says the lots may be increased to match those around. It does not also say that they may be decreased to keep it in kind. And I have to ask the question of why we would allow somebody who owns a piece of property on which they live to dictate what happens to the property behind them or next to them that they do not own and have not invested anything to improve. Not to say that we give free rein to people to develop whatever they want to. I can tell you, having recently gone through this process, that you don't do that, so there's plenty to keep everybody in check. But I think that this is an unworkable standard, and even though I understand where it's coming from, I don't think it's advisable for the city to adopt.
All right, thank you. All right. Hearing no one else, I'm going to close the public hearing on this, and I will entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept this with the, and I want to make an amendment, but I think I just make the motion.
Make a motion and then we'll work on that.
I'll second.
All right, we had a motion from Mr. Sellers, second from Mr. Rice. All right, discussion.
Okay. Since I brought this up, I'll go to where the reasoning behind this. I understand everybody's reasoning behind what they've said about, and I tried to think about this to be as flexible as possible so that it wouldn't be so over-restrictive. 2 things. One was I tried to set it up such that if there are blank lots out there, blank large...
Mr. Sellers.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to do that yet. Discuss.
Motion, and then we'll discuss.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Well, no, this is the discussion. He already made the motion second. This is discussion. And I would prefer him to discuss this and then make your amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's on me.
You're doing right.
That's on me. I thought you were making a motion again, so, yeah.
Sorry. I was trying to explain the reasoning behind this, and that was that by just doing the boundary, it would provide what I would say to the people that's been here for 30 or 40 years or longer. It would provide them some protection to their land values. But then, as you move away, you could go across the street and you could start decreasing as far as fast as you want to a quarter acre lot is the minimum. The idea was inside the property you could have quarter acre lots or whatever you wanted to make it, but the boundary would be like size. And I think this was the intent originally, but as I saw it when I read the regulations, they looked very ambiguous. All right, and what I have seen is in a lot of, not in all of the subdivisions, but in a lot of subdivisions I've seen, the developers will come in and just make the minimum lot size without consideration for a subdivision that bounded up against it. So that was, and I brought this up at the 2040 meeting. I was trying not to be overly restrictive, and I felt like that just by doing the boundary all the way around it, wherever your boundaries are, that you have like-sized lots, then that would be fair to the people that have lived there for many years, and then you would build that, and then the builders would be allowed to decrease down to the quarter acre lot as they moved away from that boundary. So that was the intent. Try not to be over-restrictive, but also provide protection for people that have lived here and invested in their property for many, many years. Thank you.
So no motion?
Just, I'd let everybody discuss.
I thought this was just
and then-
discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, plenty of time to make the motion. I'd like to have a little bit of discussion on this, then we know exactly how to phrase that motion. But I think I know where you're going. Coming from a family of developers and people who have bought and sold a lot, I understand the plight of the developer. I really do. And I think I see this from both sides, and I agree that there should be maybe some sort of buffer, but I want to make sure that, and listening to what Mr. Markham said, if your lots are so narrow that a buffer is, or your plat is so narrow that a buffer is impossible, essentially there's only going to be one row of houses, you wouldn't want to have 15 different lot sizes going down that one road. And so I think that's kind of what I'm hearing from Mr. Sudbury, Mr. Orr, Mr. Markham. And so I think there might be a better way to phrase this, or to add, I hate to say another restriction, but another way for this, when this would kick in. And what I keep saying is we're really talking about trying to protect those subdivisions from more of the higher density and multiple housing developments that butt up against it. So where if you owned a 1 acre lot subdivision and there are, let's say, 300 houses in that 1 acre lot subdivision or whatever. Let's say we had a large 1 acre lot subdivision. I'm not even saying we have that. But that 1 acre lot subdivision, they wouldn't appreciate I'm sorry, but an apartment complex moving in their backyard. And there is a little bit of that, not in my backyard. And some of it is reasonable, not that you can control what the person next to you has, but I think that there may be a caveat that we can add, that this would only affect essentially if there were going to be able to be multiple rows of houses, or if there were going to be multiple development, meaning multiple housing developments, or it would depend on the density and for this to kick in. So for example, if Mr. Markham has a 13 acre lot or a 17 acre lot and he's wanting to subdivide that, and it's only going to be one row, and it's 0.7 behind him, and it's an acre on the other side of him, but there's only one row of houses, I don't think that this should kick in. I don't think that he should have to zigzag his property every which way. I think we should limit it to the density, and only if it's going to be a certain number of houses being built.
Can I make one more comment to what she's asking?
Let's go around first, then we'll get back. All right, go ahead.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about is that this would be laid out as a starting point. And then what I was going to, and I forgot to mention this, is what I was expecting is that just like we do for everything else in our subdivisions, there are options for variances. And so I would say that in a situation where I don't have a large, you would come to the commission and ask for a variance, and then that would be considered and voted on. Does that make sense?
It does.
I'm new to this, so I'm sorry.
Mary, can you clarify on variances and also on considerations between crime, property value, and stuff like that, and considerations that this board can take on that, or this commission can take on that?
Any regulation that's within the subdivision ordinance, they could ask for a variance from. But they would have to illustrate that there is some practical reason why they can't meet the code. So there would be relief that they could seek, given a specific situation. That's why I specifically put, and again, you can certainly change it, the minimum lot size of the proposed lots may be increased. I tried to give the Planning Commission some discretion, and also approximately the same size as the abutting existing lot. So I did not envision, if I'm up against Mary's subdivision that's 40,860 square feet, I don't think that my new lot has to be 40,860, just comparable density. As far as the market value, I can't speak to that.
Okay.
I don't feel comfortable. I'm not an expert in that.
Well, I understand that. I just thought that there was guidance provided from the state about we can't consider, it's mostly hearsay from talking about property value decreasing or increasing in crime and that kind of plight. There's no sound foundation on that
I mean,
kind
I
of
can
assumptions.
say that typically property values, as far as resale, you look at comparables. So you would look at, if I have a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 2 garage on an acre, I would look at a comparable lot for my pricing. I wouldn't necessarily then look at a 2-bedroom, 1-bath with a carport on a 1/4 acre as a comp. But again, I'm not a real estate
Okay, thank you.
person.
I think, I can't decide if I'm really for this. I can see it both ways. You can definitely get a variance. If you go forward with this, it being this vague, I think that it's not going to do any good. Really, you need some better description. Say it's got to be within 70% of the size of the adjoining subdivision. Maybe you take an average of the subdivision next to it, or I don't know how you go about it, but take like a certain percentage of what the average lot size is and make it somewhat a defined number rather than just make it ambiguous. Otherwise, people will just probably continue to do what they do. If you say comparable, I mean, they just, I'm not sure.
From our zoning restrictions, comparable 1 acre is comparable to a 1/4 acre. And in my opinion.
I mean, from our zoning restrictions, yes, but not if you're thinking about in terms of what she was just saying, it wouldn't be.
Mr. Gray.
So yeah, I'm sorry. I just think there needs to be more definition in this if it's going to be passed.
I didn't know. I'm sorry.
You're good.
We call them developers, and I think that is intentional, right? Because when we call them developers, in your head, it goes towards they're trying to make money, right? But what they are property owners who are paying taxes on this land. They are property owners who are deeply invested into the city of Tullahoma. They are property owners, many of them who have been here for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. They are property owners and, yes, developers and investors who have brought some of this major retail and some of this major industry into Tullahoma that has made Tullahoma what it is today. Right? If it wasn't for some of these developers, Tullahoma wouldn't be near the city that it is today. We wouldn't have near the amenities that we have today. My big problem here is it's not your land. It's not your property. If you want to do something with that property, then buy it. Then ask them for part of that land behind it. But you don't want me coming into your property and telling you what you can do with your property. You don't want me to make a subdivision ordinance or a new law that says, hey, we're going to require that you can't build a new shed, or if you do build a new shed, it's got to be 1,000 square foot, or then when you go to try and sell your house, you can't because of those new regulations. It's not your property, and that's what we're talking about here today, is telling, I think Mr. Sudbury said it best, and I wish I had written it down. I'm going to ask him for that quote because I'm going to put it on a shirt. It's not your dang property. You know? And that's where I asked to put this on, I asked staff to put this on here so that we could have the discussions, so that I could hear, maybe there was something that I'm missing. I wanted to hear from the community on this, but I'm not missing anything. I understand the concern, but I also know that you can't equate. One of you developers out there, can you put a $300,000-$400,000 home on a 1/4 acre lot?
300,000 or 400,000 in today's market?
Yeah, absolutely.
Easy, right? So we're not talking about, we're saying, well, because it's a 1/4 acre lot, it's going to bring my property value down, or because it's a 1/4 acre lot, it's going to be a piece of garbage property. You know, those are the things that I keep hearing. I keep hearing we need more houses, we need condos, we need it, just not in my backyard. Well, if you don't want it in your backyard, then buy that property.
Ms. Almacher.
Well, Mr. Berry, we are the Planning Commission, and the entire point of the Planning Commission is for a municipality and a UGB's subdivision regulations, plat approvals. I mean, the whole name of the game of everything that we do here. And I fall on more of the libertarian spectrum, and so it's interesting for me to sit on a regulatory board, but essentially that's what this board is. It's a regulatory board for the city of Tullahoma. We approve your plats, we approve your zoning requests, we approve a land use plan. I too am building a house, and I am having to jump through all of those hoops and understand that they can get very frustrating. And I've already hit my fair share of snags and been exposed to things of, oh, we need to fix this. And, you know, but the thing about it is no, it's not our property, but it is our town. And people move here, and they're expecting to hopefully keep it the same charm and effervescence, and that the fact that we aren't overloaded with people. Now, I think growth is great, and I think a reasonable amount of growth. If you grow too quickly and your density amplifies, there's a lot of problems that do come with that. And Mr. Schwer, I don't know why you brought that up, but I will speak to it. And the fact is, we've public health, welfare, and safety considerations as a city entity and as board members that we must consider in all of this. Now, as to this agenda number 8.2 staff report, I was a little confused because, you guys, I feel like this is really three separate things. Now, the motion that he made is really on the one thing, but I did want to draw your attention because I want to make sure that we're just voting on just that motion and not agenda number 8.2, because agenda number 8.2 has three requests. One is this, but the other is also to change the title of the senior planner, which I'm not sure we have the authority to do. Did you guys see that, a miscellaneous change?
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay, so, but just to talk about this first thing, I agree with Mr. Rice that this is hard to quantify, like Mr. Sudbury said, and so I think that we would maybe need. I support it. I really do, in the right situation. But I think that the language, we need to decrease the ambiguity. It should be shall be when it kicks into effect, okay? Because we don't want to create more confusion, but there may be situations where, like in Mr. Markham's situation, where there's only going to be one row of houses and there's not going to be that many. It's not really going to change the density, meaning the population density, and therefore, unless you're changing the density or you are increasing or decreasing the lot sizes on a multiple lot development, okay, that is more than, I like the idea of like 70% difference, then this, you know, that's when those things would need to kick in. That, you know, you would need to get, it needs to fall in line if it's going to change the density, or there should be a buffer out. So I think what this is saying, and the point he made is, on like for Anderson Farms, you have a 200-acre parcel of property, then really just the bordering lots would then essentially have to conform, because then that would be your buffer. Okay, and not, when I say conform, not every lot is the same size in Terra Estates, so you would have to have it within a certain margin of error. Okay, and I like the idea of the 70%. But what you would do is you would almost essentially create a buffer, and then in the interior of Anderson Farms, you really wouldn't have much to say about if they wanted to create quarter-acre lots and however many they wanted to create with this. So just, you know, that's what we're saying here, is this would only affect the bordering lots, but there does need to be a kicker to where it has to be within a certain range, and it wouldn't go into effect unless it was a certain density change in population. That's what I think.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I would like to kind of add on a little bit to what Mr. Barry said a while ago. You know, I think that some of the things that we're saying here is making us sound like we think we're a homeowners association, because that's what a homeowners association does. And we're trying to act like that, and that's not our charter. That's not what we're here for. And you know, you think about some of the things you like about Tullahoma. I like, well, I don't really live in Tullahoma. I live in the planned growth boundary. But at the same time, I care, you know, about what's around me, but I know that there are limits on what I can do to control that. And there's a lot of things that I'm liking about what some of these developers are doing around here. I'm liking that we got new stores like Publix and some of the other restaurants and other things that we've got and new industries that we've been able to get in this area. And if we get over-restrictive in what we do, we're going to run these people off. We got developers in here today that are telling us that they can't live with this, but yet we're restricting them. And, you know, you can just go too far with government restrictions, and that's what we're trying to do. And as I said earlier, we're talking like a homeowners association. And I think we're going way too far with this, and I think we need to give serious thought. There may be some things that we need to do and we need to change, and we need to try to protect homeowners that have existing lands from things that would would lower their property values. We need to do that, but we need to do it in a smart way and not take a pig in the poke and adopt something like this today. I just can't vote for it.
Thank you, Mr. Comer. Anything else? All right. I mean, yeah, go ahead, Marvin. I'm sorry.
Again,
Mr. Sellers.
I've tried not to be over-restrictive just because of what you said, and we're only talking about a boundary of many existing subdivisions to a piece of land. And then once you move away, you can, right now, the way it's written in the zoning regulations, it says the minimum lot size is a quarter-acre lot. And if I had 300 acres, I'd put a quarter-acre lot all over it, and just because that's going to make the most money. But that doesn't take into account any of your neighbors around you. You've just said, well, you know, it's my land, I can do what I want, yes. But I thought that the part of the Planning Commission was to maintain a decorum of what the city's supposed to look like, not have houses that are nicely distributed around, and then all in the middle of it, you have all this, what looks like Murfreesboro, plotted right down the middle of it. And the main reason I was interested in being a part of this, and it's just my idea, I'm not going to tell anybody how to act, but I want to explain my position, is that the people I talked to when we were going through the 24 discussion were, a lot of people just didn't like the idea of having, you know, quarter-acre lots as far as you can see up and down the street. That's what Tullahoma is not, is the way I see it. And we have some of those areas in Tullahoma now, and people, well, they don't like it. But hey, that's what the way our regulations are written right now. The builder can do whatever's the minimum, and I think that's what's happened. So that's just my concern about Tullahoma. I'm not trying. I didn't want to be overly restrictive. I understand the concerns on everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mr. Sellers. Mr. Sellers, to your point, is, you know, it's more of like, what can we do as a city? You know, what dictates, you know, what a developer is willing to do with their land, and how we ended up with half-acre lots, one-acre lots, and stuff like that. I think that's kind of market-driven almost. I understand the intent of this. I definitely think I mean, first off, the way it's written, I don't think it has a leg to stand on. But the intent is there, but I'm not so sure that we can say that the quarter-acre lot is of any less real value than a half-acre lot. And this is, to me, it's weak, and it's a little bit overly restrictive. But that's my feelings on it. I think that, you know, if we want to do something where we have more half-acre lots, more one-acre lots in the city, we need to figure out a way to kind of incentivize developers to take that approach. I'm not sure how we do that, but I'm not a realtor, so I don't know. Anyway, any last?
Yeah, I agree with you on part of the Planning Commission's job is and the planning department's job is to kind of, here's the vision for Tullahoma. We were doing that, right? We were working on a place types map that says this is what we want, and this is kind of those areas where we want. And once you kind of identify what you want the city to look like, here's what I would love for it to look like, then you step back and you start looking at ordinances and zoning. And all of these in here, what it feels like to me, we're putting the cart before the horse, right? And that's kind of the situation that why we're even here to begin with, because we've just added amendments, we've just added new resolutions, new ordinances, just kind of haphazardly without having a major master plan, right? And so now we have a broken system. And so I'm with you. I don't think that's the way to do it. I'm always going to be on the side of property rights. And I live in one of those, you look down and it's quarter-acre zones, and I love it. My yard's too big. So it's not all that, not everybody has a problem with that, and not everybody looks at Tullahoma. I've been here 30-something years, and I'm okay with that. I live in that, so.
All right, with that, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay.
Nay.
Mr. Sellers, Ms. Almacher, 4. Any abstain? Okay. And then, all right. So motion fails.
Who opposed?
Comer, Hall, Schwer, Rice, Berry. All right, motion fails, 2 to 5. All right, moving on to the next the next bit of this, and let's go ahead and include the bit about the change in title from senior planner to planning director. Mary, I'll let you speak to that a little bit more, but I believe that's just because of a change in the organization of the city.
Right. Thank you. Yes. When I was promoted, they created the position of planning director, and so I'm in charge of that department. So there is a senior planner position, but when if that's ever filled, they would answer to me. So then it was brought to my attention by the city administrator that the code needs to be updated to have the planning director as the authority.
Yeah, it's okay. And then about the, I guess on page 68, the new verbiage there for the.
Required connectivity.
Right, it used to be, my department used to be the community development director, and then the planning, senior planner was under the community development director. When Winston Brook was no longer the community development director, he became the director of TAEDC. They renamed the community development director as the planning director.
I just.
Yes, may I, can you open discussion on that before you move on?
Motion.
Second.
Okay.
Move to approve the change in second, just so we can discuss on the senior planner.
On planning director.
Yeah. May I, Chairman? Discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So, yes, so that actually was departmental reorganizations, and it's my understanding that whenever that was changed, the director implies that you are lead over the entire department. And the way our organizational chart is set up in our charter, Mr. Worsham, I'm not sure that we, as the Planning Commission, need to approve this change or not approve this change, because Mr. Barry, he said that.
Matching her title is all.
But it's more than that, because the title was approved by the board and the directors of the department. So what I'm saying is, in the organizational change, that department then came under, they combined it, and didn't it go under Public Works? When they changed it, there was no longer a planning director position.
They didn't combine.
All right.
If I may comment, it is not the power of this plan commission to designate anybody in any capacity at all. If the Board of Mayor and Aldermen has directed that this position be, let's say, supervised by a planning director, that's what she is. So all we're going to do is reflect what they've done. We don't have the power to revise that in any way.
Yeah, we don't have the power to revise it, so we shouldn't be revising it in here.
Well, this just needs to reflect what the Board of Mayor and Aldermen has done. If they've changed that position's title to planning director, then this document should reflect that.
We didn't change it to planning director.
I'm saying if the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
If we do,
yes,
it needs
if that
to.
were done, yeah.
No, we did not do that
reflect what the
recently.
city's done.
No, we did
that
not.
like 6, 7, 8 months ago?
We didn't change the position.
Yes, you did. I'm sorry.
I would need to see that first because I don't believe that we changed the title, but.
When I was promoted, there is no longer a community development director. It was changed to the planning director. And that's my title. And then under me is the senior planner, so your subdivision regulations, which outline the duties of the department, need to reflect the current.
I have no problem with the change. I'm just saying it does need to be reflected by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen first before it's changed here. Now, if that is true, that we did change it, then if you could cite by what resolution number and then bring that back, then that would be in line. Because the way this reads is if this board has the authority to change it without that person, and I agree with Mr. Worsham that was my problem, is that I didn't think that this board could make that change. And so if we're enacting the Board of Mayor and Aldermen's change, that's one thing. But I would need to know what that resolution is in order to support this.
Can we call the question?
Yeah, call the question.
To approve the title change.
That might not have been by resolution, probably just by vote. That kind of thing doesn't need to be changed necessarily by resolution or by ordinance.
Right.
But we can find that in the minutes and bring it back before y'all.
I think it does need to be reflected in the minutes here that this is a change being enacted by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, not by the Planning Commission.
It'd be appropriate, yes. All
Yes.
we need to do is reflect that to change these documents.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Ms. Umwater, did you make that motion?
Yeah.
No, I made a motion. She seconded.
I would like to make a motion to postpone until that can be brought back and reflected, as Mr. Worsham, our city attorney, suggested.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Original motion.
The original motion is to enact the changes of updating the title senior planner to the newly titled planning director, and also removing and codes from the planning department, as that was.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we also have a motion to postpone discussion on this until, and we have a second on that? All right, hearing no second, we'll go to vote on the updating from planning, senior planner to planning director, and removing codes from planning and codes department for just the updating verbiage in the document. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes 6-0, or 6-1 with Almacher opposed. Let me know when we're cut up and we'll move on. Okay. All right. I didn't think. And then the final thing in this 8-2 is it's on page 68, I guess. Mary, I don't know if you want to speak on this anymore.
Yes, thank you, sir. The last portion of this proposed text amendment is on page 68 of the packet. It states that new major subdivisions within the city limits cannot have direct access through an existing major subdivision, right-of-way, and/or road stub for more than 30 proposed lots. So the thought would be to, again, if you have a large piece of land that you're proposing to develop, and it adjoins an existing subdivision, when that existing subdivision was platted, they dedicated a road right-of-way and/or stub that no more than 30 of your lots can access through that existing stub. Now, you can certainly have other roads that connect to main arterial roads within the grid system, or collector roads or local roads. It's just in those specific scenarios, and I've kind of done an analysis, and there's probably only about 5 or 6 subdivisions in the entire city that have dedicated road stubs leading to big, large pieces of property. So it would only be in those instances.
All right, thank you. All right, much like the last one, we'll open the public hearing for this. Anyone that would like to speak on this change, come forward and state your name. Mr. Markham.
Again, Dan Markham, 1783 Avoca Lake Road. Mary, I'd ask the question, is the 18 acres that has a new road proposed that goes through the subdivision to the north part of the list that you have determined?
Yes, that would be one of them. So then if you were to develop that lot with the subdivision coming off of Autumn Lane, your new road could access 30 lots, and then the remaining lots would have to come directly off of Avoca.
How do we monitor that or manage that? The only reason that we have is that the fire department, it's so thin, so narrow, that there's no way to put two roads down. So therefore, to have single access to the end of the subdivision, it required some type of second exit. So we have no need to go through that other subdivision, period. But how do we control it and how do we deal with it? You're saying it has a restriction, and I don't know how to make that restriction work.
Well, when your major subdivision would come in through this planning commission as the preliminary plat, we would evaluate it at that time to see what your proposed road network is.
Are you saying we would be limited to 30 lots?
You would be limited to 30 lots coming off the new road directly through that neighborhood to the north.
Even though the exit to that has two exits itself. When it comes in north, the northern exit either continues on the road or turns right and doesn't require anybody to go through it. So I don't understand how the regulation works. I just need some clarity from how that works. If you exit to the north, then you can go to Halcomb Lane, or you can turn right and go down whatever that street is, Autumn Lane.
But you would still be going through that subdivision. So it's trying to reduce the amount of traffic that goes from a new subdivision through an existing subdivision to get out to the main roads.
But they can go out down their own main road. So there's no requirement that it go out.
That's how.
Are we saying, do we restrict people from going out?
Yes, you're restricting the
How do
access.
we do that?
By the code provision.
You don't build a road connecting one subdivision to the other if it's more than 30 lots. It has to be direct access.
The road
to a main
has to be
arterial.
built to give an exit.
Yeah, to a
for
main
the fire
arterial.
department.
That's right. Yeah.
So how do I restrict cars from going that way?
You wouldn't have a road that went through there. That's what it's saying.
I think you're saying they're going to take away one of your exits.
Just put an extra buffer.
Well,
All right. Mr. Marcus, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Orr.
I'm still Joe Orr. And, 106 Kensington Lane, Tullahoma, Tennessee. To me, this is another example of being over-restrictive.
Right.
Tullahoma's always been considered to be very restrictive with codes and planning and zoning, and it's good. We've got great developments, and we'll continue to have great developments, but if we get too restrictive, we won't have new developments. They won't do them. And what if we've got a tract that only has one access through another subdivision? And it's, needs to be more than 30 lots. So you're putting that off the table. So I think it's too restrictive. I think it needs to go away, just like the other. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Orr.
Ron Darden, 603 12 Oaks. I'm not a developer and I'm not a realtor. And I don't want to see a new subdivision with approximately 200 housing units exiting through a mature, developed subdivision. There'll be all kinds of problems with the streets that'll have to be improved. And I'm told that once you go above 30 lots, that you have to have at least 2 exits or points of access. And I'm also told that the Planning Commission has to approve all access through the subdivision, including a construction entrance over a period of how many years? I've heard 15. I don't know exactly. I think it'd be a mistake. And I think it's a lot of it's a zoning issue, but that part of it is a subdivision issue. I noticed that the zoning ordinance has a requirement for 12,000 square feet for an R1. And I don't know that the zoning ordinance has any other restrictions in it that apply to that subdivision. Most of it falls on the Planning Commission. And that's probably something that needs to be looked at in the future. But I don't think the Planning Commission ought to go along with just the developer's issue. I'm a property owner as well. And the whole point of zoning is that you can control lot sizes, house sizes, setbacks, and the public's interest, and not just the interest of a realtor or a developer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Josh Sudbury, 104 Troon Way, Tullahoma. At the prior amendment that we discussed at least attempted to look impartial and apply across the board. This one doesn't even wear a mask. It simply attempts to prevent whatever was going to happen at the Anderson development from going through neighborhoods like Terra Estates. I think it's interesting that we have the safety concerns that we talk about with giving access to neighborhood roads and being able to bring in the emergency personnel, and then we would then pass something which says that you can't actually utilize those linkage points that have been left over in prior developments for the future developments to utilize. To answer Mr. Markham's question as to how your property would be dealt with, the city would simply tell you that you can't build more than 30 lots. So that would change the way that you developed it. It would devalue your property, just like it devalues any other existing property that's waiting on development. I do not think here in Tullahoma that the regulations are written in a way that simply favors developers over current property owners. There is a balance, a nice balance that is struck with the various restrictions you have on what can be put on any given piece of property. But this particular verbiage is both dangerous for the reasons that we spoke about earlier. I think somebody here on the council mentioned it tonight for safety personnel and for safety vehicles to access these new developments. And it is improper in that it automatically devalues the existing property that's out there and makes development less likely, therefore making homes less available in Tullahoma.
Thank you.
Terry Flagger, 308 Terra. I don't think I think it's just common sense. It doesn't even make sense to me why you would want to take any existing subdivision, use their road, and not just in Terra and Anderson Farm, but I know there is another property on the west side yet to be bought, purchased, developed, but there's going to be the same issues over there with large property. This just happens to be coming first. That's why it's on everybody's mind. But you're going to take, possibly 500, 600 units and put them all through one road. Now, there will be other access, right, other roads, but common sense says people aren't going to use those other roads. You're not going to drive to Robert E. Lee and go all the way around. I mean, you're going to have all those cars coming down one. That is just a common sense. I mean, it's just a natural buffer in there. There's, it's not that hard to say, well, how do I get 30 homes? It's pretty easy. There's natural buffers. You put woods, you put land, you put whatever. So it just seems only fair to the existing property owners. We're landowners too. It doesn't seem like a balance. It seems like it's all development. They have a right to develop, and should make money. I'm a business owner as well. I'm there to make money and help people. That's the part they're missing. Be respectful to your neighbors and think about what they would want in their yard or down their street. So I think that's very reasonable to have 30. I think it's common sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff Bowen, developer, builder in the area, developer, Settlers Trace, Macon Manor Phase 4, Collinwood. Again,
you have your address, please.
I keep echoing Mr. Orr's statement.
Okay.
Again, very restrictive. You are isolating portions of land that were left for future development that will now no longer be physically feasible to develop. I developed Settlers Trace. Any of you are familiar with it. I only had one way in and out. 15 years ago, this board approved it. Today, no. The difference, the city was collecting $67 in tax revenue off of that property when I bought it. Today, it's in the millions. What I'm hearing on all of these, and I've dealt with it in 38 years as a contractor, I want my home in my subdivision, but the guy that comes after me can go somewhere else. A lot of these things that the squabble's being brought up on were left access. For example, had Terra continued to grow and an economic downturn not stopped it where it did, then Terra would probably take in all of the Anderson farm already. And I've invested in the last 15 years over $2 million of my money in city streets and infrastructure. And the regulations on those roads are higher for us building them new than what the city roads are currently. We're not building a pig path. We're building a city access road for traffic to use, not just the homes that are there at the time we build it. The infrastructure's there. You all's regulations, the Public Works, everything else sees that we're building roads that'll handle any traffic you put on it. So again, we're stepping into a restriction, and to leave green areas at $25,000 an acre for land, all the cost to meet all the other restrictions, you can't just start leaving acreage sitting.
Thank you. Any further comments?
I'm Susan Baker, and I have 312 South Jackson Street, and I agree with every one of them.
Joe Lester, I live at 2011 Country Club Drive. I am the managing partner at Horton Family Partners. 3 comments I want to make, 3 bullet points. I went to the development meeting the other morning, proposing a commercial project on Cedar Lane, had a very good discussion. I opened my comments by saying we need controlled quality growth in Tullahoma. That's what your job is to. Let's control the quality growth. Growth is coming. Bullet point number 2, the most successful subdivision I was a part of in this town was Courtside as you enter Lakewood Country Club on the left. There's 28 lots in there. They're 0.15 of an acre. If it's a planned unit development, home run. I would be doing some more of those. And my third comment is we have right now on the drawing board, we're going through the final approval on the Pine subdivision across from my house on Country Club Drive. Yes, Dan, it's got more than 30 lots, and yes, we have to have 2 ways to get in and out, one on Avoca Road and one, of course, on Country Club Drive. One part of the equation that you all are missing, I'm going to say very quietly how much we're going to have in the development before we ever sell a lot. Are you sitting down? $2.5 million. You don't understand what it costs to do anything anymore. It's unbelievable. In TUA, and we got a letter in November imposing effective August an impact fee. of $187,000 on the Pines that I hadn't got final approval on. Now, I've discussed with TUA, we knew this was coming. If we pay it by before 12/31, it's $127,000. We're working to massage that a little bit in hopes. It went into effect August. We got the letter in November. These are just signs of the time. It costs so much, Rick Bowen, to develop a subdivision.
Thank you, sir.
$2.5 million in the Pines before we ever sell the first lot.
Thank you. All right. Final call. All right. I'll close the public hearing, and I'll open it up for a motion.
I'll move to approve for sake of discussion.
All right. A motion to approve from Ms. Allmacher. Second from Mr. Sellers. All right. Discussion. Ms. Allmacher.
Okay. I understand that the cost of doing anything these days has just skyrocketed. I'm really going to look into more what they're talking about with TUA. I'm glad you guys brought that to our attention tonight so we can understand more about their fees. But as to this, I think it's about general connectivity. And it's about, do we want all roads to lead to all roads, or do we want roads to lead to main arterials that the city has to maintain, not necessarily the subdivisions or developers? And the thing about it is we can't have it both ways. We can't say, oh, you have to have two methods of egress, and the only other method of egress that you can find is through an existing subdivision, or you can't build anything. I feel like that would be too restrictive. Or you can only have one road, and then the fire code say, okay, you can't build anything because you don't have two roads. It goes back to the density issue once again. So maybe there is a motion we can make. I mean, obviously, I feel like, if it's more than 30 lots, that's going to a density issue. That means that those 30, you're not restricted from not being able to build whatsoever, but the 30 lots that you would have road frontage to that existing subdivision, you could only run that going through that one subdivision. So you would almost have to break up your subdivision a little bit to try to get your roads out to main arterials. That means all your roads within one subdivision wouldn't necessarily connect to the other parts of the subdivision if you had an egress through an existing subdivision. I don't know if that made any sense, but it's about connectivity and limiting some of that connectivity to protect the traffic patterns going through high residential, areas where children walk to school because we have no city busing systems and that type of things. If you live in Terra Estates and your children walk to East Middle, but you're about to develop a property right behind it and put essentially 500 or 600 people, it's not just the fact that the road may run through Terra, it's the other considerations. Again, going back to health, welfare, and safety for that community, and the walkability, which everybody also wants. So sometimes there's this double-edged sword. I do think that in certain situations, a variance would be appropriate when it would be unfeasible or unpractical. And so define practicality. I think that Mr. Lester has a point. I think that if you bring to us and say, I can't get this done, and the fire code say we can't get this done unless it does this, then we figure out a way that should be on our director or our city planner or senior planner to look at that and say, okay, well, let me help you figure out a way that would meet, or what variance would be appropriate to present to the Planning Commission. Given the fact that we are so landlocked, there's only so much land. And ultimately, where a lot of it sits, it probably is going to have to connect through other places. I'm torn on this. I see the point. I think that it does protect some of our subdivisions that have been there for many years, but I also too see the point of the developers on this one. So I would love for this board to maybe come up with something that, helps to create what the citizens are asking for to maybe help limit some of the connectivity and the traffic with these larger developments. Or maybe there's a threshold that we can put in.
Back when I discussed this with Mary, and when we talked about it during the 2040 discussions, one of the ideas that she had brought up was, Mary, what was that? Where it's a hidden road, you called, that allows for connectivity index increase.
Fire lanes.
Yeah, fire lane that would be present for emergency vehicles, but not for normal traffic. That was, again, a thought process there that would be present to increase the connectivity to the other areas in this that would not be allowed to egress normal traffic.
That's a good idea.
Can't keep people from parking on grass, more or less, not driving on a road they're not supposed to.
Yeah, how well would that work? I don't understand the concept of that.
So a fire lane is a type of access easement where the soil would be compacted to handle fire apparatuses in event of an emergency. So say, let's think of an example. I've got 2 cul-de-sacs end to end, and then there's lots on either side. You would have that fire lane and access easement so the truck could effectively drive through somebody's side yard along the access easement to get from one road to the other.
But would that solve the problem of they have a plot of land and they really only have one access, and the only other access is through another subdivision?
Right.
If you put that, would that meet the fire code to allow them to build the existing lots, even though they only have one exit for public use? They have another fire entrance. Would that be suffice to where they could develop the full amount of lots that they would be able to put on their property, or is it going to still restrict them to 30 lots?
No, this is a concept that's used in many, many other jurisdictions throughout the country, and I've reviewed it with our fire chief. He agrees that would meet the criteria for another means of ingress and egress. So that would be a situation where it could potentially be a win-win, where you could limit day-to-day average driver traffic connecting through the subdivisions, but it would also solve the problem of emergency management if there was a need for an ambulance, fire, police to get from one phase to another in the case of an event.
Is that blockaded off when it's not an emergency use?
Typically, there's signs.
So I bet if you go to Kroger right now, there's people using the fire lane, so.
I mean, it's not, typically it's not a paved road, it's
usually a gravel road,
compacted
isn't it?
soil and with geoblock, and then grass grows through it, and there's a sign that says fire lane access only.
The ones I've seen have a gate that's controlled only.
That's another way you can do it.
No, because
With the Knox block, with the Knox box, and you put in the key and it pops
Well,
and you
it's
go.
automatic thing on the fire
And you'd be
vehicles.
prosecuted for that. It's trespassing.
So that's something that they can currently do within our.
Yeah, we did it with one.
Yes, we did it, we approved
Yeah,
it in the lakes on Ledford Mill.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Mr. Berry.
So, based off what I heard, we're targeting 5 properties, roughly, with this law, right? Because there's only about 5 that would meet this criteria, so we're targeting those 5. I've been back and forth on this one. I actually had in my head thought, let's surplus the land and do a conservatory, and I've been kind of back and forth. But that's also, I don't know that that's fair, right? Because I went and talked to some people over on Jerry Lane and Grundy and Anderson, and so what we're saying is we don't want to disturb you guys right here, but we're okay with dumping all the traffic over to you guys over here because these guys are more special than you for whatever reason. We don't know why, but they're more special than you are. I don't think that that's fair, right? We talk about connectivity. Bad planning is when you end in cul-de-sacs and you don't have multiple entrances. And I live on the west side of town. And if you've ever been over there, we're all connected around there. Probably a little too much because I get lost still, and I've been here a while. I still get lost over there.
It's not so bad.
But it does help disperse traffic through. So, I'm going to say no to this as well. I again think part of it's putting the cart before the horse. We don't have kind of a master plan. We're just taking stuff and throwing it out saying,
We do have a master plan. It's called the 2011 plan.
Let's fix this. We have a broken plan saying, let's fix this. We are targeting specific properties with this. And I think that it's also very unfair to the people that we're saying, we're okay with dumping traffic your way.
Mr. Sellers.
Yeah, I think the one difference here is that we're talking about taking traffic out of a new subdivision and onto collector roads versus going through a subdivision. I mean, there is a little bit of difference there in that those streets are collector roads where Terra Boulevard is not a collector road.
Maybe, but they still live there and their kids still walk.
I understand.
And that's the argument that we're
But they
using
would
here.
probably not like 500 houses there either.
They're okay with it as long as
As long as the traffic doesn't go through their street, it goes out the other way.
dispersed fairly, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the estimations that I've seen. If I'm wrong, Mary, please correct me.
Mary stepped out.
Stepped out. I believe that the traffic that they would have to put through there would mean that you'd have to go from a 2-lane neighborhood road to a 4-lane, possibly more, to have the connectivity to get that many houses out through Terra. That's so that's not an insignificant impact to that subdivision that we're talking about as one example. I don't know about the other 4 that she's talking about, but it's the same kind of impact to any large area that's going to feed through an existing subdivision, which when the Planning Commission originally laid these out, the intent was not to feed that many houses through there. If I had to guess that phase 3 of Terra Estates, if that's what that would have been, would not have had, anywhere from 400 to 500 houses in there. That's not what I would. Yeah, we don't know.
My concern.
Phase 3 of Terra.
My concern from the development, I mean, by the same argument, really, is that if you open up that path, you're essentially allowing access to out of Tullahoma, which is important, and I think you can ask anyone that lives in Riley Creek Road of that, but out of Tullahoma, so everyone that lives in Macon Manor, Terra, Kings Ridge, a quicker way to get to 55, and by the same token, it's like those people on Jerry Lane, those people in the new development probably don't want that happening either.
Yeah,
but on the other hand, connectivity is always a good thing. It's bad business for the city to be into to have a bunch of dead-end roads. It's also, to one of the citizens' comments, that to have to drive around and not take the shortest path to get to Robert E. Lee to get their kid to school increases traffic. It increases the mileage driven. It increases number of trips per day. The more connected the city is, the better off we are. On the other hand, we strive for an index of 1.4 or greater, and that's typically of just that current development. But I think we need to start looking at that really from a more grand plan. Whereas, Terra only really has an index of 1, and that's so we as a city and taxpayers are supporting Terra to have all this infrastructure and roads that we have to pay for, and I get no benefit from it, and neither does 99.5% of, or even more than that, of Tullahoma. So that's my thoughts on this. Connectivity is, we want everything to be connected as possible. We don't want things to do this. And the neighborhood that I live in is very connected. I don't necessarily have a traffic problem. I don't live on a dead-end road. Ms. Almacher.
People in Terra Estates, Macon Manor do pay a pretty penny for those property taxes, I can tell you that. So it's not as if they don't pay for having those lots closed off a little bit. I'm just going to tell you, and I'm sorry, but we also need to determine, this is all, I mean, this might be a little ignorant on this one, but define subdivision. So we tend to define subdivision as pretty much anything like 2 or more lots and you've ap subdivision, but really that's not, and when I think of a subdivision. So, if you have an HOA, you've got a subdivision. If you've got 5 lots on the same street that are right next to each other, that may or may not be a subdivision in my just thinking about a subdivision. And the thing about it is Mr. Berry, do you rent or own your home? I mean, here's the thing. Over on that side of town and those types of homes and the lower lot size, the majority of those, and what we're seeing across the United States, not just in Tennessee, but everywhere, is houses that are, they're investment properties, and they are single residential family dwellings who usually become rental properties. There's nothing wrong with rental properties, and if that's what you intend to build and that's what you're wanting to do, but please understand that the majority of people with larger lot sizes and larger homes, there are less rentals, and there's a purpose for that when people buy those. And not that there are no rentals, but there is a direct correlation. And so we get to choose, and when we're looking at where we want to, we want to invest and we're going to raise a family and things like that, that's the idea, is I want to, if I'm going to invest and pay all these property taxes, because Tullahoma, we have quite the property taxes, I want to look at where's my child going to be the safest, and all of those factors and considerations. And I feel like you probably should have more say-so in these meetings if you are paying those property taxes and have come here, and if you're a developer who owns land that you're trying to develop. But, thinking about that, the majority of people who have larger lot sizes or larger homes that own those homes here in Tullahoma, and those are property owners we need to be protecting, rather than setting the stage for, I'm sorry, corporate developers to come in, build massive amounts of rental properties that they are not on site to regulate, and then run all that traffic through neighborhoods who have HOAs and are paying all the property taxes and live here and shop here. And so that's one of my concerns, and the reason that I want to protect Tullahomians first with these types of regulations.
Ms. Almacher, do the people not renting in Tullahoma also citizens and Tullahomians, as you quote?
I'm sorry, what? Yes, they are citizens, but they don't, if you're talking about land and property and taxation, yes. And who should be making the decisions,
Okay, thank you. Let's wrap this up, but go ahead, Mr. Gray.
Yeah, I think that what we have heard here tonight is, if what we're looking for is for these out-of-state big corporations to come in and buy up land and develop, then we're headed down the right path if we continue this, because these guys have said, we ain't dealing with it. So we're going to put our property up for sale, go to the highest bidder, and now these bigger corporations, they got the money to fight us in court. They've got the money to do whatever they want. They've got the money to come in and just lay out. So if that's what we want here, let's keep going down these paths that we're going down, because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
All right. No more comments. I'm going to call the vote. All in favor of the verbiage as written regarding the new major subdivisions? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay?
Nay.
No.
Nay.
Nay. Nay, okay. All right, motion fails 2-6, 2-5. And that's Mr. Sellers and Ms. Almacher. Nay. Yay. Yes.
No, we're not done.
All right, all right. Moving on. That concludes other business 8.2, I believe. Is that-
Yes, it does, sir.
Okay. The next matter of business is the Planning Commission meeting schedule for 2023. It's in your packet. I don't think that's necessarily up for any kind of vote or anything like that, so just,
Yes.
I'll let Mary speak to that real quick, and then
Yes,
we'll...
just one thing that I will note, that we always have the meetings on the third Monday of the month. The January 16th Monday is MLK Day, which is a holiday. We can still have the meeting that night, or do you want to change it to the next day?
I would prefer the 17th.
Okay. I will amend it then.
It actually says that here.
Yeah, it says the 17th in it.
Where am I?
I changed it.
The one I'm looking at. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I caught it and changed it in your packets, but I didn't change it in my
Okay.
packets. Never mind.
All right, and then-
Sorry.
And also, in the similar dates for the 8.4 is Board of Zoning and Mayor Appeals.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. All right, and with that, we will adjourn. Or Mary, do you have any comments on
Sorry.
8.4? It's the same dates.
No.
All right, so with that, the Planning Commission meeting is adjourned, and now we will open up the Board of Zoning and Appeals meeting. So I will call that meeting to order. And we will read and approve the minutes for the October 17th, 2022 meeting.
Yes.
Do I have a motion from Mr. Berry for approval? And a second from Mr. Hall. Any discussion? With that, I'll call the vote. All in favor of the minutes as written? Aye. All opposed? All right, and any abstainments? Okay. Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you. Just to clear the agenda, item number 4C, variance 225 has been withdrawn.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you get those? You caught up. All right, with that, so which one was withdrawn? The C?
C4C, variance number 225 has been withdrawn.
All right, there's no unfinished business, so we'll move on to new business with public hearings. Variance number 223 to reduce the front yard setback for a principal structure for 412 Anderson Street. The applicant is Hart and Family Partners. Mr. Welsh is here to represent them.
Yeah, thank you for letting me speak. I'm Darrell Welch. I represent Hart and Family Partners as Assistant General Manager. Have you seen in your packets, from what we can tell, the Hardens have owned this property since the 1930s. The last structure on it was an old spur station that we tore down in early 2000s. They paid taxes on it for decades, and the property is currently unimproved. I hope y'all have had an opportunity to go by there and take a look at it, because you can see what we're trying to do. We're asking for a 35-foot variance on the side of the road that's facing East Balney Street due to the railroad having a 100-foot charter easement. This easement does not allow for a permanent structure. Our ingress-egress would be off of Balney Street. Any sidewalks would be within the dedicated easements required by the city. With the current city setbacks, no permanent structure could ever be built there. We literally have 1 foot to build on. That's all we've got. So what we're just trying to do is to try to improve that property, try to make it more cosmetic appealing, naturally, give us some rental property also. Probably do, I don't know, maybe office space or something like that. Maybe even some warehouse space. Probably won't be many warehouses. I think we got plenty of those in town. Probably be something bigger. Don't know what we're going to do yet, but that's kind of our intention, our plan at this point. If not, we don't know what we're going to do with that property, because there's no reason for us to pay taxes on it for another 20 or 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you. This is I guess, a public hearing, so I'll open a public hearing for any public comments on this, on variance 223. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and I'll move on to the staff report from Ms. Samaniego.
Thank you. Mary Samaniego for the record. As the applicant stated, production, thank you, production. As you can see, the lot is approximately 205 feet wide and 110 feet deep. Because of the existing railroad easement of 75 feet, if you take the 75 feet plus a 35-foot setback, given that the lot's 111, that only gives them 1 foot strip to build in. I will reference, if you look at the aerial photograph, the subject property is in blue, but I want to point out the property across the street right, which is Anderson, and then below it to the south, you can kind of see the development pattern in the immediate area. All of those historic buildings are built up to the front right-of-way line. So it's my professional opinion that reducing the setback from 35 feet down to 0 setback actually is in keeping with the development pattern of the immediate area. Most of the lots are right up to the front building line. It wouldn't be a situation where you're approving a variance that would create something that is kind of out of context of the massing and scale of the immediate area. And there's no practical development in the 1 foot area without the variance. So saying that, I've provided you the required 5 findings of fact in your staff report on page 4, saying that because of the peculiarity of the lot and the design with the the CSX railroad easement plus the setbacks, there's a practical hardship for the property owner from having any beneficial use of the property. So saying that, staff recommends approval of the variance request based on those findings.
All right. Thank you, Mary. All right. With that, a motion to approve from Barry, second from Mr. Comer. All right. Any discussion on this? As a general rule, is that something we can look at as having a 0 lot setback for commercial zones or anything like that in the future? So we don't have to go through this process?
Yes, typically a lot of commercial districts do have 0 front yard setbacks. In certain districts, typically those are in areas that you want more pedestrian activities, say like a downtown area, you want the buildings pushed forward, so you walk along the sidewalk and there's like an interaction between the pedestrian on the sidewalk and the front doors, as opposed to like along your more commercial strips, the buildings are pushed back and you have that parking lot in front.
And
so it is common to have 0 lot line for commercial industrial zones today.
Okay. And our downtown is zoned that way, is that
Correct. C1 has a 0 front yard setback.
But C2 does not?
C2 does not.
Okay.
C2 is 35 feet.
Okay. All right. I don't know if that's something we need to look into or, I don't know. Probably worthwhile. All right. Anyway, that's all I got. Anything else? You look like you wanted to say something.
No.
So it's kind of, all right. All right.
I want to vote.
All right. Yeah, I do too. All right. I'll call to vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right. Motion passed 7-0. Moving on to variance 224. Reduce the front yard setback for the principal structure from 35 feet to 25 feet for 100 Princeton Lane. Applicant is Mr. Yang. If you'd like to come and
Just go up and say your name and your address.
Yes, my name is Xiao Yang. I live in 105 Sarah's Point Drive. And application for the lot was in the Princeton field, 100 Princeton field. They tried to build the house there, and the homeowner associate they want me to face the house from the Princeton land to Turkey Creek. The Turkey Creek, yes. So The reason because they have the 3 tree planted behind there. They don't want to remove the tree. So I put application for that.
All right, well, thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Good job.
All right. This is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing for any public comment on this variance. All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and move on to Ms. Samaniego for a staff report.
Thank you. As the applicant stated, this is for the first lot in Princeton Fields. As you can see, it's highlighted in blue on the presentation. It is a corner lot. These are the site plan and the current setbacks from Princeton Lane. There's a 25-foot setback from Turkey Creek Road because it's a collector street. There's a 35-foot setback. Then you've got a 10-foot side and a 20-foot rear. I worked with the property owner and the realtor for months and months and months and trying to get us a house that meets the minimum square footage per the HOA to fit within those setbacks. And then we finally found a model that would fit, and then come to find out that there's an issue. If you can kind of see here in the area, I'm circling it, but you can't see. Right at the entrance, there is a series of arborvitae trees that the developer planted and that cannot be removed per the HOA standards. And I believe they included that and highlighted that in your packet. So now the applicant can't have a driveway access or fronting Princeton Lane, and then the front of the house would be shielded behind a row of tall trees. So the alternative is to rotate the house and have it fit front on Turkey Creek. The issue now is that with the setbacks, he literally can't fit the house in. Their proposed house, the smallest, most compact model that he could find is 47 by 43. It would fit if it's a 25-foot setback, but it won't fit with the 35-foot setback. So given the combination of the size of the lot and the HOA restriction on really being able to access or front Princeton Lane, staff is recommending approval to the variance based on the staff findings that there's peculiarities with the design of the lot.
All right. Thank you, Mary. Motion from Mr. Berry. Second. Second from Mr. Hall. Any discussion on this? All right. Looks good. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. With that, with the 4C has been removed, and we are adjourned. Thank you.